So this is a story about the Redheaded Woodpecker. One time, Jules was walking down through the woods, and he was just kind of strolling along, and he looked up ahead there, and he could see a fire, and there was a person standing there over the fire, and as he looked, and he saw it was a woman, an old woman there. And she was standing there, and she had a little red hat on, and had a black shawl thrown over her, and then she had an apron, a white apron, and she was kind of standing there fanning the fire like that. And he was looking at her, and he knew about her already. She was a kind of a cranky old woman, so they banished her from the village, and that's how come she was living out in the woods all by herself. And so he thought, I'm going to test that old woman. And Nanbaju, being a magician, he could do anything that he wanted. So he just raised his arms and went, shh. And he became an old man. He was all stooped over. His clothes were ragged. He had a long beard. And he kind of shuffled up to the fire, and she saw him. The old woman looked, and she saw this old man coming, and she looked, and the old man said, "Can you help me? I'm tired, I'm hungry, I would like something to eat." And the old woman looked at him, and she, being a little bit stingy, decided, well, I guess I can give him something. And so she says, "Sit down." She said, I'll fix you a cake of corn. So she took some cornmeal and fashioned it into a ball. And she says, "I'll put it in the fire to bake." And so she put it in, and they were talking there. And every once in a while, she'd look at that cake of corn to see how it was coming, and took a stick and turned it over, and so it baked on the other side. And pretty soon she looked, and she said, "Oh, it must be done now." And she took it out, and she looked at it, and gee, that was a nice one. And her being stingy, didn't want to give that nice cake of corn to the old man, so she put it aside. She told the old man, "That one burned up. We'll have to fix another one." So the old man says, "Oh, I can wait. So this time she took a little bit less than what she did. And again, she put it in the fire, and she tended it and watched it, and they were talking. And this time she looked again, and what was happening here? That little piece was bigger than the last one. It was nice and brown, and she thought, I can't give that to that old man. She says, I don't know what I'm going to do. But this time she hid it in her dress, and she didn't know, but that was Nanbaju playing his magic on her, making that corn go bigger all the time. And she said, "That one fell apart. I'll have to fix you a new one." So she this time grabbed a little tiny piece, just a small one, and fashioned it and put it by the fire. And she thought, I'll watch it. And she watched it, and they talked, and she watched it. And pretty soon that corn was getting bigger and bigger. And pretty soon it was huge, bigger than the last one. And she thought, what's the matter here? She says, that shouldn't be doing that. And she looked at that great big piece of bread, and I can't give that to that old man. That's the best one I ever made, she said. And she looked at the old man, and she says, "Old man, go away. I have no room for old beggars. Get out of here," she says. And the old man looked at her. He says, "Old woman," he says, "you should be kind to people. You should treat them well," she says. "But you haven't done that with me." He says, "For that you will suffer." And he raised his hands. And as he raised his hands, he brought his hands down, down, down. And the old woman started to get smaller and smaller and smaller. Pretty soon she was just a little thing, about 6 inches tall, standing on the ground. And then he looked at her, and like that. And as he went like that, her red hat turned into red feathers, and her new nose grew into a beak, and then her black shawl that had turned into black feathers, and they were turned into wings, and her white apron turned into white feathers. And he says, from this day on, he says, you'll have to go in the woods and look for your food, he says. You'll be tapping in the trees, he says, pecking away in the trees looking for food. That will be your punishment for not helping everybody. So that's how come we have the redheaded woodpecker today.